All right. Thank you guys so much for joining another episode of Celeste the Therapist podcast. My name is Celeste. I'm a therapist from Boston. And if you are listening to me on audio and you haven't subscribed to my YouTube, do me a favor and subscribe. You can catch all of these episodes on YouTube. And today we're joined with a regular guest. We have a segment called Getting Your Mind Right. And this is our first episode of the year. I'm going to have you introduce yourself to my audience for people that are new here.
Oh yeah. First off, I forgot. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
February now. Happy New Year. Hi, I'm Jermaine Morris. I'm a certified coaching consultant with a practice that's based around the DISC assessment. And so it's basically using a test that helps show how we interact with people, how we deal with problems, our ideal communication style, and dealing with potential blind spots in our behaviors, things that we may not be aware that we do or as frequently as we do them.
Yes, and for people that are new here, or even if you're a regular, if you want to hear like episodes just from Jermaine and I, on my website, CelesteTheTherapist.com/podcast, you can find the link to all of our episodes where one of them we specifically talk about the DISC assessment. I had my DISC assessment analyzed by him on the podcast, so you can kind of have an idea on what that is. But for today, we're gonna talk about men. Men tend to get left out of the equation a lot, and I think it's something that happens because uh, I feel like sometimes society does not recognize men as human
Yeah.
and a person with emotions. And I always use this example. My youngest kids are like a year apart. If they both fell at the same time and scraped their knee, my daughter would have more love and "Are you okay?" and my son would be the one to be told to man up. Literally the same exact injury. Like, how the heck does that happen? I really want to we're gonna talk about that. And recently, I seen a meme that showed Will Smith and Tyrese and someone else in regards to them sharing something, crying about it, and they became a meme. And so, like, from your perspective, Jermaine, what's your mindset around, like, let's just start with the young age. Start with the example I gave with my son and my daughter. How the heck does that happen when they're both human beings?
Because I think that parents want to help facilitate their children to being the people that they want them to be. So when your little boy falls, I want him to be strong. I want him to be tough. I want him to be able to push through, shake it off. And so when he falls, hey, rub a little dirt on it, walk it off.
Mhm.
We're so bad with young boys. Whatever hurts, we'll grab what hurts. Like, my hand hurts, we'll grab and shake his hand like a little bit harder. Like, see, it's all right. Walk it off, walk it off. And then when little girls get hurt, we want them to feel protected and taken care of, and make sure that they're okay, because the perception is that women are frail,
Mhm.
softer.
Mhm.
I don't want her to hurt. The boy, he needs pain to grow. The woman, you want to prevent pain from happening.
Mhm.
And so I
Mhm.
think, as when kids and stuff, it's got, especially with boys, and it's just like, I need to toughen you up for this world.
Right.
You know?
And I hear, so you use the word strong, right? Because
Yeah,
and I hear that with Black women a lot of times.
yeah,
People categorize strong, independent. One of the things that I try to like break down for people when I hear the word strong is, I don't think strong is someone that is not crying or not acknowledging the emotions,
not at
because
all.
not doing that, it shows up in different ways, right?
Yeah,
If both of my kids scrape their knee and there's an infection, but I only take my daughter to the hospital and not my son, that infection is going to show up in different ways, right?
yeah,
So it may not be a linear, direct, like this, you don't cry about this or you don't acknowledge this and then X, Y, and Z happen. It can show up, it could be all over the place.
yeah.
And so like I like correct me, like tell me if you're on the same page with me. Like,
Okay.
strong is actually being able to acknowledge the hurt, the good, the bad, all of it, because guess what? I feel like you'll be able to be more in control when you're aware of what's happening? What's your mindset around that word strong?
Yeah, so whenever I hear strength, I kind of same way I
Mm-hmm.
always qualify. What are we talking about?
Mm-hmm.
And so, because strength can be in resilience, it can be in discipline, it can be in determination.
Mm-hmm.
Strength can be labeled in the ability and the willingness to be vulnerable. Strength can be
Mm-hmm.
in, you know what I mean? Like, so whenever I hear, I know when people say, well, to be strong. And
Mm-hmm.
specifically, that is a moniker attached to Black women, I think, with the wrong intentions,
Mm-hmm.
and then with boys, the strength is the perception of Superman.
Mm-hmm.
So strength to when you're attaching it to males is nothing hurts you.
Mm-hmm.
Strength attached to women is everything you can deal with.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, whenever I hear people talk about strength, I'm real careful to see what are we talking about.
Right, right, right. That's good. Hopefully people listening can understand that, because I think biologically men are stronger than women, right? That's why they have separate kind of races. That's why certain sports the way
Yeah.
the way they happen, because I think biologically there's more physical strength there, right?
Yeah, even that though. So men's muscles are stronger, and so that's why we're careful with the language. So if you were to say a bench pressing competition, the
Mhm.
strongest man is stronger than the strongest woman to date.
Correct.
To
Yeah.
date. So I mean, there may be somebody walking around, but recorded.
Yeah.
Um, but if you're looking at almost every test that they show when it comes to the ability to process and deal with pain, women are far greater, can handle pain more.
Internally, correct, correct.
So if we're saying, well, who's stronger, the measurement is subjective. So
Correct.
yeah, so that's why I even watch saying that men are stronger. I think, yeah, men can lift heavier weight. Do you know what I mean?
Physically.
Yes, physically, men may be able to
Yeah.
physically run faster, but if you're looking at, I think it's almost every measurement of a pain threshold, women are
Mhm.
stronger.
Oh yeah, yeah, that's
You
apparent, because
know
if I'm sick, I'm doing everything. If my husband's sick,
Yeah,
he's in bed, like the world is over. So
everything.
I,
Even that test they showed where they mimicked women's menstrual cramps, and
ah,
they hooked men up to a machine that mimicked the sensation, and dudes were tapping out on a 2 or 3, where women were highly functioning on 8, 9, and 10.
uh-huh.
You know what I mean? Like, it's just
Oh, right, 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 right. Okay, you're right. So when I just for the record, when I was thinking physical, I was thinking more of the gym, like muscles.
yes.
But you're making a clarification that yes, you're right.
Yeah, so when
And so
somebody says
obvious,
they're stronger, that's why I
right.
kinda like, "Okay, well, what are we talking about?"
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes, yes. And obviously I know there are some women that are stronger than some men, and I'm
Yeah.
just more talking about generally, just so I won't nobody don't write in mad at me.
I know what you're talking about.
S so okay, so we know that that's the case. We just talked about, with my son and my daughter, and I think,
Yeah,
like you said earlier, regardless of race or socioeconomic status in America, I know because this is where I live.
yeah,
Men um, all have been painted this narrative of no emotion. And so I know specifically, like with the pandemic, I've seen more men recently. And I know even in sessions, if there's something emotional we're talking about, most of my male clients try not to like allow tears to flow, or they'll
yeah.
say, oh, I got something in my eye. And so like I'm a transparent therapist. I'll call it out and just kind of say like, so why does that happen, you think, here, regardless of race? This is not a culture race thing, it's a men thing, where
Yes.
they have a hard time expressing themselves emotionally.
Well, I think part of it is you're taught from as early as I can personally remember about boys don't cry,
Yeah.
about control your emotions. about get out your feelings,
Mhm.
all those sorts of things, you know. And if you're young and you try to go down the route of processing and describing and explaining your emotions, you're acting like a girl.
Mhm.
You know, stop whining. You know, like you're just corrected such an early age about
Yeah.
whatever you're going through. You need to keep that to yourself. You
Yeah.
know, like walk it off, take a lap, you know, go in your room, whatever you need to do, get yourself together, you
Mhm.
know, it, and check your little feelings, you
Mhm.
know.
Mhm.
And
I,
yeah, and it's not a race ethnic um socioeconomic thing. That's basically how
no.
boys are brought up.
And as we're talking about this and my mind is going, I realize like this is an unfortunate factor of like some breakdowns in relationships,
Yeah,
because you hear the saying like happy wife, happy life.
yeah,
That saying is there is because I think sometimes men, like Valentine's Day or whatever, these holidays that are here, I think men are expected to like do the most. And sometimes this is what I hear in the streets.
yeah,
But I think with women it's more so like, okay, like you have me, right? And that's your gift.
yeah,
And I think that's I think that for men, I don't know. And the same way men are conditioned that way, I think females are conditioned that that is the way it is, which is
yeah,
why their emotions aren't acknowledged, which is why when they're struggling, popular like person, Miss Kevin Samuel, when he talks trash about women
yeah,
on there, people are like that's messed up. But I've seen a few where he's talked about a man on there and it was a bunch of laughing emojis. The energy was not the same.
yeah.
Do you feel like even though men are taught that way and then women sometimes we latch on to that way of thinking when it comes to men as well?
Yeah, because a woman would be taught to find a man that's got his emotions in check.
Yeah.
Find a man who can just deal with whatever. You know, you're looking for quote unquote the biggest, the strongest, the most capable, the most able to protect and provide. And so things so in regards to like relationships, it sounds bad because and it's kind of like was like a double-edged sword when you're the man in that respect, because you're taught the relationship will be greater and stronger if you're opening up and you're vulnerable. Like if you allow access to that part of you, it will create an intimacy with your partner, which will actually forge your relationship stronger. The other side of that is that the second you show that degree of vulnerability, you have now created doubt. And
Doubt with
so
who?
with your mate. So if
Um,
you're the analogy I've always used when it came to that discussion. So imagine if you're with your significant. So ladies, if you're with your significant other, and some man says something disrespectful, and your man stands up to defend your honor, and when he steps up to defend you or protect you, he gets knocked out.
mhm,
From that day on, you will always have a question about his ability to protect you.
mhm,
Like that doubt did not exist before. You believe that I'm with my man, I'm fine. Like I'm straight. He's with me. Ain't nobody gonna do nothing, whatever, whatever. You saw him take an L. Now that factors into all the scenarios that you're in. You can't just erase that.
mhm,
And there's a little seed of doubt that's shown. So now if there's any hesitation in him, if there's any type of anything, now I'm not as secure in his ability to protect me that I was before I saw that level of vulnerability.
mhm,
So
mhm,
that becomes the belief with a lot of men. The second I take this L in front of her, I lose that position of being that guy to her in our relationship.
mhm, mhm. That makes sense.
Yeah.
I
So, okay.
Go ahead. No, I was just thinking, I wonder the type of pressure that must feel like. Now, I know like this kind of doesn't matter, like regardless of race or socioeconomic
Yeah.
status, but specifically with Black men living in America, we're in a system that wasn't really designed for us, and the system of protect and provide,
Yeah.
and those kind of things that are placed on man, which is fine. But I wonder how much like anxiety or how much like pressure that must feel for black men black men to do these things and 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 um and come back into the relationship and try to do these things but not feel seen or not feel heard.
Yeah, well, so you have to understand, like, so the dynamic of us in this country is that so we're in the weird space to where black women have more advanced degrees than black men. So
Mm-hmm.
in most other groups, the men are excelling beyond the woman. Men
Mm.
get paid more, higher up in positions and jobs, more advanced
Mm-hmm.
degrees. That's the
Mm-hmm.
dynamic. With us, it's not the case. So you'll find a lot of areas black women make more than black men. You'll find
Mm.
in a lot of areas black women have more advanced degrees than black men. It almost kind of falls on the one thing you have left to hold on to is your ability to protect. Because even
Mm.
providing is not necessarily going to be you.
Right.
So if you drop that ball, do you know what I mean? Like this is
Mm-hmm.
all I'm clinging to. Like this
Right.
is the last three fingers on the raft. Like so there's a constant state of I have to reiterate and prove and posture and try to hold on to something because you taking L's out here for a lot of black men to taking L's. And
Mm-hmm.
so you try to find the one or two areas that you are, strong in, and you may try to double down on that. But as for what's the overall feeling, I think until you back up. So when I was younger, because I think that
Mm-hmm.
if anybody knew me younger, know me now, I'm not gonna say two different people, but there has been some growth that's happened. And so I never operated in a space where I felt like lacking, but I did have a different associations to feelings. Like one of the jokes I used to always make is like feelings, they still make those, like I just
Oh
did not
wow.
acknowledge them at all.
Wow.
I was like, my feelings are irrelevant, and sometimes so are yours. Like it's kind of
Wow.
the space.
Yeah.
Like, what does your feelings have to do with getting this done? You know, there was a line in the first Bad Boys movie, Martin Lawrence, Will Smith movie. In the very first one, they attacked a police officer when they broke into the station. It's got to be maybe longer than the tooth to remember this movie, but it was a real quick scene where they didn't kill the police officer. They just like drugged him, took him out.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so when the next scene, when they're asking the cop, and the cop, they start describing how is he feeling, and the cop on the phone said, "I didn't ask you how he feels. I said, what did he see?" That's the mentality that I was kind of operating in. Like, what happened? Just well, how do you feel? It doesn't matter how I feel. And then if I'm dealing with you, I don't care how you feel. Did it get done? Is it finished? Like your feelings are not even secondary; they're
Right.
almost non-existent.
Right. Right. Right.
And you're told if you play sports, play through the pain. Your feelings are irrelevant. Block your feelings out. If you have to work and get a job done, nobody cares about how you felt. They just cared about if you completed it or not.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so in everything you do, your feelings are just invalid.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of what you're pushed towards because you're
Mm-hmm.
taught you'll be more successful if you're not in your feelings. You're more desirable if you're not emotional.
Mm-hmm.
Ice water in the veins, the cold,
Mm-hmm.
cool, calm, collected, all those sorts of things that you're taught from keep your feelings in check. And that's actually a positive.
It's and this is why I think a lot of times people say like, well, women are more emotional and men are more logical. I think that it's not the case
Mm-mm.
that we are more of. I just think we utilize more of, like, men tend to utilize more logic because of the way they've been conditioned about
Yeah.
their emotions, but it doesn't negate their emotions.
Yeah.
How
They're
does
still
this
there.
they're still there, yeah, but
Yeah.
they're just utilize like the I think the logic kind of takes over when it comes to decisions or problem solving. Or I know even when I have dialogue with my husband, I'll come from an emotional approach about a situation and he'll be like, just say no. Or I just be
Yeah.
like he just it's just clear. And I'm thinking more about things that are put into it. And he's just able to just be like blah blah blah.
Yeah. You learn how to work with one hand tied behind your back.
Hmm.
So eh, if you had to do anything with one hand tied behind your back, there'll be a lot of frustration and feelings in the beginning.
Hmm.
Then at some point, okay, it's not fair, or I wish I had the other hand, or whatever. After a while, you turn the corner on that, and
Mhm.
you just see, what can I do with my one hand?
Mhm.
Your thought process becomes very distinct and decisive when you
Mhm.
got one hand to work with.
Yep. Yep.
Second
Yep.
hand creates options,
Mhm.
and you start talking to shoulda, woulda, coulda, and maybe this and that. There's no room for shoulda, woulda, coulda, maybe if you're operating with one hand.
Right. 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 Right.
And so that's where it's not that, well, men are just logical and women are, no, we're just operating with our emotional hand tied behind our back.
Right.
So we just become very decisive.
Right. Right.
It's really as a default, as opposed to, well, this is
That
who we are.
exactly. And I
Yeah.
think that's what people, because most people are operating like that,
Yeah.
I think that people think that that's the way they were born, and it's like, no, this is
Yeah.
not how they were born. That's just the way they learn how to live life and operate in that way.
Oh yeah, and I say all the time, women's like, well, men aren't emotional. I guarantee you, last weekend when half these people's teams didn't make the playoffs, didn't win the Super Bowl, I said, if you ever want to see if your man is emotional, watch the last 15 seconds of a game he's glued to, and watch when his
Mhm.
team wins or loses,
Mhm.
and tell me if that's not an emotional man.
Mhm.
He'll be running around the house like he played for the team, like he's got stock in the company, like they gonna send a championship ring to his house, or he looks like he's about to
For
throw the TV through the window. That's emotional.
good, good. We gotta let people know, because I don't think they realize, like, that's a really good example on,
Yeah,
because men feel more they feel comfortable being able to, because that's something
yeah,
that's acceptable,
that's an
right?
acceptable expression of emotion. But yeah, let you been a 49er. I live in California. Let you been a 49er fan this last weekend, and your squad got beat. There was a whole lot of emotional men walking through these streets.
So let's talk about, I want to talk about, like, how is it showing up, right, for men listening, and also this is a really good segment for women as well, to maybe like recalibrate and shift your thought process about maybe your child or your spouse or someone in your life. What does it look like when men are not expressing themselves emotionally? Because you're like the self-awareness guru, like you really like have transformed a lot, sounds like, from when you were younger, and you highly believe in this idea of self-awareness without judgment, which
Yeah,
I 100% agree on. And so, like, you can't be self-aware if you're not acknowledging what you're feeling. For
yeah,
people listening to the watching on YouTube, I'm so big on emotions. I have my emotion chart in the back. It's something that I think is a staple for being able to, like, really live and deal with the things that come up in life. So what does
yeah.
that look like for men when they are not acknowledging parts of them?
Okay, so the way that I kind of see it, so that most men fall into one of two categories: that you have a deep cup or a short cup. So a deep cup means that all the things that are happening in your life, you've got room in your cup to keep pressing these things down, to keep repressing these emotions, to keep stamping down these traumatic events, to keep pushing through and persevering. Like your cup is deep. You just keep like this closet just seems infinite. So you can keep packing all this stuff down without ever really feeling like it doesn't overflow to where you have to deal with it. The problem is that the longer that it sits in your body, because your body stores it, because the cup is so deep, it sits for so long, it becomes cancerous to your spirit. That's why men are having heart attacks at 50, high blood pressure, hypertension, high levels of stress, because this your cup is deep enough that it never overflowed out. So it's still there when you were 6, it's still there from when you were 9, still there from 13, still there from 18, still there from 20. It's still in your body because your cup is so deep, but it's so stored in there, it is so toxic and cancerous, it eats away at your body. And you'll see men who are 50 who if you ask them, they feel 70. It's just okay. You're muted.
Before you go to the short cup, the
Yeah,
short one, I just want to say, like, that's really deep. I mean, like, literally, and that example is really, like, spot on for people listening. What Jermaine is describing is the mental health aspect showing up physically.
yeah,
I don't know what I was watching, but they were saying how, like, men, they were showing couples. What was I looking at? They were showing couples, like who has grown older together, but the men
Yeah.
is like on a cane and like, or in a wheelchair, and the woman is the one that's like up and going, like, because once men like retire or whatever, like all of the stuff that's in them is probably like eating away. And
Yeah.
that's why I tell people like your physical, your mental, spiritual is all connected. But that's such a, Jermaine is like so spot on about the way it just seeps, like the way you describe it, I can just like visibly see it. And I really want people to be able to visibly like use visuals to help themselves understand what they're doing to their body when they're
Yeah.
not dealing with it. Thank you for that analogy.
Yeah, that deep cup. So for some of us, we feel like that's better because we're able to put one foot in front of
Right.
the other. We
Right.
get them go to work every day. We make it happen in the
Right.
fourth. Like we're clutch. We can still keep, we just keep stamp it down, and you just keep going forward. Well, like I said, that cup is really, really deep. You may live your whole life and that cup never overflow. But
Yeah.
what happens is that nothing ever came out. Kind of like when you get drunk and you get nauseous
Mhm.
and your body kicks out some of the poison,
Mhm.
that's
Mhm.
been in your system. That
Mhm.
never happens. You
Mhm.
never get
Damn.
nauseous. So the Hennessy stays in the system.
Mm.
Like
Ugh.
when Remy's in the system, it's
Oh, bringing back some bad memories.
yeah, it just stays in you. And
Yeah.
so the organ damage, the liver failure, the stress,
Yeah.
the bad sleep, the compromised immune
The
system,
back.
all that stuff, because it's all in your cup. It's still in you. It
Damn.
never comes out. So that's why you'll find those men, like I said, they're dropping dead at 55 with a heart attack. And you're like, man, he looked physically fit from the outside, but he had the heart of a 90-year-old. It was just under so much
Damn.
stress and weighted and just like you're like, how does he have a quadruple bypass at 52? Like that cup was deep. And to everybody else, they'll tell you, oh, he was stoic. He was a pillar. He was solid.
Right.
Like he handled everything. Yeah. And he never released any of it.
Damn.
So
That's deep.
those are the people with the deep cup. So now if you have a short cup, these are people whose emotions are always spilling out. And so these are people who, when they get hit with a couple left hooks of life, these are people who now they're having exploits of anger. They're
Just so we're clear, when you say short, the short cup, it's not that they're managing their emotions. These are just the cups, but that's unmanaged, right? Okay.
just overload.
Okay.
So for the person with the deep cup, they can keep dealing with trauma, with pain, with heartbreak, with resentment, and keep putting one foot in front of the other. The ones whose cups aren't as deep, they can't take as much. So what happens with them is that they're like short circuiting. Like they just have they reach the point their cup is full, and now they're trying to self-medicate to manage the feelings of an overflowing cup. They're getting drunk, they're getting high, they're doing things to try to deal with those feelings of the cup overflowing, or they're just having these outbursts where you're just like, he's going from 0 to 100. Why is he mad all the time, angry all the time, depressed all the time? Like the overflow of emotions because you have no more storage. So as you keep pouring into, one guy's got a gallon jug, the other guy's got a shot glass. Well, if you keep pouring you keep pouring 2 gallons worth of fluid into that shot glass, this person always seems like they're all over the place because they're somebody who really needs to process and deal with their emotions. So they'll either, like I said, default mode, you'll start doing stuff to manage it yourself. You'll start self-medicating to kind of slow the world down so you can deal with these things as they get in front of you or deal with the feelings. Or you're just all over the place. In any event, if you're a short cup or a long cup, it's problematic. So some people, we respect the deep cup. Society respects the deep cup, the one who can just keep getting up every day, keep going to work, keep doing this and that, regardless of what it does to them. And then we make memes of the short cup, the one who sits there and cries about something that's going on because they're really just, they've reached their end, they've reached their limit, and they're having an expression of an overflowing cup. And because that's quote unquote not manly, they're the subject of ridicule, which makes somebody else look okay. Well, no, I'm not. No, like I'm not about to do that. I'm not about to be that guy. So, I mean, even one of the worst was like, so there was the Michael Jordan crying face that they put all over everything. Michael Jordan crying at the Hall of Fame. induction. Like
Right.
a pivotal moment of being crowned. Like this is the culmination of all the great things you did professionally, and had an emotional moment. And he became the face
Miss
of
USA never becomes a face of a meme for
never,
crying.
never. And it's like that crying face was
It's
stamped all over
problematic.
everything.
Yeah.
You're just, oh well, shoot, hell no, next guy up, keep it together.
Right.
Like I'm
Mhm.
not about to be all over the internet with that.
Right.
And so those are the two. So when you ask how does it show up or what does it look like, those are two examples of the people where this is when it comes to mismanaging. So the people who figured it out what their cup is and deal with it, that's a little different. But for the ones who are not dealing with it, those are
Right.
usually the two examples that I've seen.
Right. That is spot on. And for people managing their emotion, the men that are able to do that, kudos to you, because you working with a lot of opposition. You
Yeah.
got memes floating everywhere. You got society telling you, trying to reprogram your mind. I'm sure because it's something you've done, right?
Yeah.
Reprogramming you to go from what feelings, what are those, to be here sharing this today says a lot about how our brain is
Yeah.
malleable, and it's able to be reframed and changed. And I really, hope people that are listening to this, especially like, when I hear about these people having heart attacks so young on their way to work and all this stuff, and all I think about is man, they must have been, first thing is like they must have been a lot of stress and pressure. Like that's, my mind literally
Yeah.
will go there because I understand how mental health plays a role in our physical health. So that was really good. Um, for men, so I want to address a couple of people. For men listening to this, what would you suggest they do? And then afterwards, I want to talk to people who may have children or a spouse that's a man. What would you say, with considering that you're a man? So, it's
Been one for a
nice
little
to
while
have.
now.
Yeah. So, what would you say to men who's like, man, yo, Jermaine, you hit it spot on. This is so me. Like, I really need to do something about that. What would you say to them?
So I can only start with where I was first. And so I had realized that I had a bunch of things that I was carrying around with me. And so a good example of, so I guess we keep it a buck. So at the end of last year, I had a couple of incidences. 3 people who were important to me passed away like back to back to back. And one was kind of like a mentor in certain areas of my life. Another one who we were close, like my sister. I don't remember the last time we would ever go 2 weeks without talking to each other. And then right after her was my grandfather. And so it was just like I remember being at her funeral service, and there was, so say like men and women got up and spoke, and 90% of the women who spoke were pretty solid and kept it together, and 99% of the men who spoke kept it solid, kept it like they was at the podium, like they was running for office. The 1% that had tears flowing down their face, me. And I realized that couldn't have been me years ago. Like I remember people passing before, and you're told, keep it together. Right. You need to be whatever. I've reached a point now to where it's just like whatever I'm feeling, I'm feeling. And that holding the stuff in became problematic for me in other areas. Because when I was younger and I didn't address these feelings, I was also known for being a much angrier person. But I wasn't angry. I was just irritable. Like the cup, I don't know how full it was or wasn't, but it had enough in it that, like, even if I had a whole other mile to go, wherever level I was at, we reached the irritable stage. So it just didn't take much for me to get off, like, to be in a bad space. And so, and I was just like, this is not how I want to feel. Like, so it was almost like changing the oil. I had to empty out the bottom and get all the old stuff out first. Like, what was the oldest stuff that had been sitting in that cup, and deal with that, family stuff and just life, whatever, you know. And that allowed me to be in a place now where I can be, where I just feel whatever is I'm feeling. I don't
Okay.
feel compelled to feel like I have um, to me, my character, my integrity, my quote unquote manhood is not predicated on my ability to repress tears or not.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? It's like, so when
Yeah.
I look at the totality of who I am, I don't pigeonhole or minimize my entire existence to one exhibit of behavior.
Mm-hmm.
And so if a man's like, well, how do I get to the place where I'm starting to start healing? Remember that you are way more than one expression of emotion.
Right, right, right.
That is not the litmus test or the deal breaker of your manhood. If you
Mm-hmm.
communicate or if you express what's going on, or even if you just take a knee, take boxing, take the stand and 8 count to take some time to start dealing with the stuff that's going on with you.
Yeah.
A lot of this direction where I've been going on recently was going through all these studies of how men 35 to 65 have been killing themselves at an insane rate.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's like 3.5 times more likely than most other groups. And it's
Mm-hmm.
because these cups are full,
Mm-hmm.
whether they be deep or short. Like you keep getting told, and then you look for outlets, and you're almost criticized for asking the question, is there some place to talk to or some place to go? Like before you
Right.
even get to the point of dealing with the resources, even looking for them, you get the side eye.
Mm-hmm.
At some point there has to be the decision of what's more important, somebody's side eye or my health and happiness.
Yes.
You can, and I'm a firm believer in, you can feel or say whatever you want about me from across the street. If how I'm trying to live, which is whole for me, which is healthy for me, if you have any feelings about that, that is a conversation between you and you.
Mm-hmm.
And I think so for men, when we're trying to heal and get into these spaces, if you're with somebody and you feel like it's ridiculed or side-eyed because you're trying to get that place of being healthy, then a good thing to remember is what state were you in when you picked them? Because if you get with somebody and you're trying to get yourself healthy and trying to get yourself whole, and the mate you chose is ridiculing you or belittling you or putting you down because you're being soft, you're acting like this. Okay, remember, you picked them from a very painful place.
Mm-hmm.
So if that relationship doesn't make it to the other side, that might not be the worst thing for you.
Right.
And so getting yourself around people, getting yourself in spaces, which leads to a program that just started out here. And it was because of in the same energy. And so I used to run these 5Ks for different charities some years ago, but I got these Derrick Rose knees, so I had to cut back on that.
Mm-hmm.
My meniscus is like uncooked ramen noodles. Like this
Oh my God.
sneeze wrong, and I tear an MCL. So I was like, I need to get these just to kind of for exercise. So I want to start walking them. And so with all the stuff going on, it started this thing where a bunch of men were all roughly in the 35 to 50 range. We just get out and walk the equivalent of a 5K, which is 3.1 miles. And we just talk about whatever's going on during the duration of the walk. And
Nice.
it's not a therapy session. It's just what's going on with you. We
Mm-hmm.
talked about relationships, parenting, get money, home ownership, what's going on with life, whatever's going on in that time period. And we're exchanging ideas, stuff that somebody learned that somebody else didn't learn, that realization that we all were taught wrong, like all these things that we kind of help express and get out. And we do it during the course of this walk. And
Mm-hmm.
so, you get the exercise and the fresh air, which helps keep the Rona off you.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's an outlet to be able to talk. And so for men who are looking for something, you got to get you a tribe that's about being healthy. Get you a
Mm-hmm.
tribe that's about being okay for you, and get you around some folks. There are a lot of men out there in the exact same boat. Like,
Yeah.
so it's not like, well, I'll be out there by myself. No, you won't. Because we are all taught from the same bad playbook.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
You know.
And I think thank you for sharing that. You know, even though you say it's not a therapy session, I think a lot of times we're conditioned to think of healing as therapy or psychiatry. I think
Yeah.
community is healing. And I
Yes.
think like what you guys are doing, and it's something powerful about being around people that are dealing with the same thing. There's this unspoken bond that happens. That's why AA works so well. So I think like that's super dope. For people listening, like you may be the first person to like kind of kick that walking group off, or with the pandemic a lot of things are online. You may be able to find some groups online, but don't not try anything. One thing that Jermaine has said past previously on one of the episodes is like when you're trying to change, it may be like sounds like walking over a puddle but feels like walking over a Grand Canyon. So the feeling that may come in as you're trying to like really like embrace yourself your full self, your system is going to be shocked. It's like, what are we doing? We don't cry, right? So I say that because even though Jermaine's in the place that he's in now, during the transition, it was not a smooth, linear transition. I'm sure
No,
you
not at all.
questioned like this stuff. And so I want you to know, like, whatever change you're trying to make, like, you're gonna question it. It's gonna feel weird. Your system may like try to like pull back and say, wait, we don't cry because it's like used to it. But you got it. What Jermaine says is kind of like keep your goal in mind. What are you trying to achieve? You're trying to be whole. You're trying to be healthy. And so I think that's one of the staples of how I talk to people about change is like picturing and imagining where you're trying to get to, and let that be where what you're looking at when you feel like giving up, or when you feel like, is this really going to work? You just got to keep going. I think that's
Yeah,
powerful.
yeah.
um
Depending upon how old you are,
yeah.
it is how how dry is the cement.
Hmm.
So if you're in your younger 20s, the transition is a little bit easier. But for some of us in our 40s and 50s, we feel like, oh, this is just who I am. This is just how I am. And the reality of that's just not true.
It's not true.
And we think of we have less time, but the reality of it is that if we're open to the change, we actually might get more time. It's like we think short term because of how we feel. We feel like I mean, I ain't gonna be here but another 10, 15, maybe 20, because we're carrying all that stuff around. Talk to these people who've learned to let that stuff go. They think they're gonna be here forever. Like like when you learn to start releasing that stuff and getting that crap out your system, it's like driving a car on 300,000 miles of the same oil. It's all cruddy, it's black, there's no viscosity, like it's not working, it's not good, it's not healthy. But when you're just like, man, get that stuff out and clean it out, you see life differently. You don't see life as emotion avoidance. You don't see feelings as landmines. You don't see like, because them feelings feel like landmines when you're in that space. You're just like anything that starts to feel like it might trigger an emotion, you like, nah, like we're not talking about this. We're not doing this. And I'll even, because anger is an acceptable male emotion, I'll pick a fight with you to make sure we don't talk about the stuff that's harming me.
Right.
You know,
I wish that we were able to see it in real time, right? Like, I think like if I'm like my hands over the fire, literally, I'm
yeah,
gonna, once it starts getting hot, I'm gonna move it, right? So
yeah,
I think that's essentially what happens internally, but we just don't see it. But if you start to pay attention to your body, I feel like our body gives us signs, the aches, the pains, the things that the doctors are talking about that's coming up. A lot of times
yeah.
we just brush it off to this runs in our family. But a lot of other stuff runs in our family too, right? A lot of other smothering and not dealing with things, which ends up becoming this medical issue. So just kind of be mindful of that.
Yeah, and to your question of if you have children or if you're the significant other,
Mhm, mhm.
if you're so I guess maybe you're starting if you're raising a son, is that what we're talking about?
Correct, correct.
Um, that what they're I always likened it to men are given like 6 crayons and women are given the 120 pack of crayons when it comes to emotions and how you want to paint the world. And so, men, you can be hungry, you can be angry, you can be, like you get a couple of. So when you get younger boys, it's not about limiting their crayon. It's about, no, let me give you some more because I need you to understand what these feelings are. I need you to understand what it is and be able to articulate what your issue is. I'm mad. Are you mad or are you frustrated? This is not the same. See what I'm saying? Are you sad or are you depressed? That's not the same. Are you know what I mean? Like, and the more that when allowing boys to talk, because what happens is there are little boys who you'll see them, and you probably see them in life who start to talk. Stop that whining. Stop this, and this. And I always said it too. Like when I grew up, I wasn't growing up with what are you feeling? I was growing up with what's wrong with you. So if there was something going on, I had to say what was wrong with me. And if I couldn't articulate what was wrong with me, I just didn't say anything. But if you're like, well, what are you feeling? Walk them through it. Like, what explain to me what's going on. The same way you see in your daughter, the need to
Yes.
get her to be able so she doesn't cower down and mouse down when she's going to be in life. The same thing because your son's he's still doing the same emotional mousing down. He's just got physical ability to compensate for it.
Right, right,
So
right.
instead of teaching them, no, I don't need you to mouse down your emotions. I need you to be able to talk to me. Like, talk to me. What's going on with
Yeah.
you?
Yeah.
What are you feeling? What does that
Yeah.
feel like?
Yeah.
And when he can identify what he's feeling, he doesn't get older and then just whenever the relationship gets uneasy, he just leaves the house
Right.
because he doesn't feel good. Because you have grown men who are walking around in emotional spaces, like when you have a small child who's sick, your kid will
Mhm.
come to you and say, I don't feel good.
Mhm.
What, you got a headache, stomach hurt? I don't know, I just don't feel good. And if they never learn the process of how the body works or what's what, or this is your head
Mhm.
and this is your stomach and this is this
Yep.
and this and that, they'll just come to you and say, I don't feel good.
Mhm.
Same with men who don't learn that emotional process.
Yeah.
As soon as she starts pressing him on some stuff, I don't feel good, I'm out. As soon as the supervisor says something to him at the job, I don't feel good, I quit. As soon as the teacher says something, I don't feel good, I'm walking out of class, or I'm gonna start becoming
Right.
disruptive. So
Right.
it's important that these young boys learn to identify what they're feeling and articulate what they're feeling, and they can get control over what they're feeling.
Mhm.
They can get themselves in a position to where I understand what this is and I can deal with what it is instead of it feeling like it's everything.
Mhm. Mhm.
That makes sense?
It makes a lot of sense. And for parents, boy or girl, get an emotion chart. You can Google one off of Google for free. They have one with 8 emotions for kids if they're young. They have a more plethora of one for like adults or teenagers. A lot of times, unfortunately, kids get a bad rap, especially like Black kids. I say we can't afford to not tell them about their emotions because when they respond from their emotions, they're treated differently from their white counterparts. So, I really want you to think about helping them express themselves because I always say, like, you're going to set them up for success because they can know their math and their history and the science. But when things happen in life, that math and the science is not going to help them deal with it because life happens to
Right.
everyone. And so I really love the way you explain that. And I think, parents are going to, especially there, um, because we were raised the way we were raised, we don't understand like the harm that's happening if
Yeah.
I'm treating one different than the other. We don't. I had someone on here, he has twins. He was a twin and he remembered growing up, they would be like, oh, well, which one's better at this? Blah, blah, blah. And he remembered how that made him feel when they were always compared. And he has twins. And anytime somebody, it's a natural thing people say,
Yeah.
oh, who's the fastest or who's this? And it's like you automatically, the comparison starts early for twins.
Yeah.
And he said, and he's a therapist too, but he was like, I'm not going to do that to my kids. And he's like, it's not like somebody did something wrong, but we don't understand the conditioning that takes place. So for parents listening, like, have grace with yourself if you're feeling like, oh man, I can't believe I've done that. Like you didn't know, you've been doing life the way you've been taught to do life. That's why you listening to this podcast.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's helping like shape some things and shift your thought process. So just be mindful of that. Lastly,
Yeah.
to my spouses, because I hear this a lot. Men, they're like, what's the point? They're going to bring it back up, blah, blah, blah. What would you say to spouses who may hear this podcast today and think, dang, like I've been fucking up?
So the thing with men is there's a lot of this misnomer that men don't pay attention. Men are highly detailed and paying attention when it pertains to women and women's value system. We will mimic whatever behavior is necessary based upon your value system. That's how we operate. If you started dating and all you had to do was say, I grew up in the church, all of a sudden, dude ain't been in church in 20 years, but he'll start quoting scripture. You know what I'm saying? Like if you say, my family's important to you, he'll start telling you some story about how he went fishing with his grandpa, how he used to sit at his grandma's, hip and watch her cook, and how him and his dad or him and his, like he's gonna give you whatever information based upon the value system, based upon what you presented to him. So if you want him to open up, if you have weaponized his vulnerability in the past, you have pretty much guaranteed that is not a route I'm going to take with you, because you have shown me based upon your system. I watched you, I opened up a little bit and I got thrown at my face. It was used to try to hurt my feelings later. So you can almost guarantee we're never going down this road again. So if you're the spouse, so first off, you have to be real. Is that me? Have I done that? Because you're going to have that come to Jesus moment with him if you want him to open up later. So if you're that first group who's done it, you're going to have to say, you're going to have to atone for going down that road with him at once. I know you opened up about what happened, your relationship with your dad, and I got mad at you and I threw that in your face. I'm apologizing that. I want us to this needs to be healed if you think he's going to go down that road again. If that has never been the case for you, you have never done that, and you just want him to open up, he seems guarded. There needs to be a soft place to land for him to open up. The reason why anybody lies is because you're afraid of the repercussions or the results of what will happen from telling the truth. Men will tell you the truth all day if you thought you ain't gonna do nothing with it. But as soon as you think you're gonna do something with the truth, that's when you start lying. So the same way with opening up and being transparent. If we think you're not going to do anything with it, then we're more inclined to open up. Men love to talk about ourselves. Just put the ball rolling and let him go. But if you're the spouse and you're like, I'm trying to get him to open up, I know he's guarded, I know he keeps these things to himself, got to create the environment and express why it's important. And
Yes.
And it's got to be like the space, the arm's length space that you're hitting me with the Heisman, the arm length space that you're keeping me at for all those things that you're keeping to yourself is the gap that's between us in our relationship. So the longer arm you have extended to keep her at arm's bay, to keep the stuff to you, that's the amount of distance that you're keeping between the two of you in this relationship. And that's the level of space you're allowing for something to come between you. So if you've got two bodies worth of arm's length between you and your mate, that's two people who can get in between you and your woman, in between you and your man. Shorten that up. Shorten that distance up.
Yeah.
And go ahead.
I wanted to say, for women, for people and women in relationships, because I know men, because they're not real, they're kind of taught to like just logic and the emotion, and you want to like start really working on like more intimacy and vulnerability. Understand that they may not have words to express what they're feeling. I know sometimes women tend to get frustrated because we will like have all this to say, but we've always had the privilege or liberty to express in that way, and men may have one word or may not know what to say, and it's because a lot of times they're caught off guard, or they're not trying to I think sometimes, I know for me, I'm talking from personal experience and just in general, I would feel, did you hear me, or do you don't feel my pain because you're just giving me one word? And sometimes it may be easier for them to communicate better in writing because they have time to think about it. So like, just because they're not responding on cue doesn't mean they don't care, or doesn't mean they're not listening. They may not really know what to say.
Yeah. And you also have to remember that when men are talking to women, a lot of times it's almost like we're talking to the police. So when you start bringing these things up, the process is, what are we talking about?
Right.
If you come, well, why don't you open up more? What is it you think you know that you think I didn't tell you?
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Like, what is it you think I'm keeping? Where do like the thought process starts to go to, what clues are you trying to put together right now?
Right.
We're having this conversation.
Right.
So it's got to be, so that's why getting in the habit of discussing stuff, of explain why we're talking about this.
Yeah.
Oh, I just want us to be able to talk, because if we're going to have kids one day, or we already have kids, I need these kids to be well rounded. I'm watching what these young boys and young girls are doing out there right now, who lack the language to properly express and articulate what's going on with them. They're turning to the gram, they're turning to the talk to get these things off them, to get these expressions out, because they don't feel like they have somebody to talk to within the confines of their home. Like, I'm trying to prevent that stuff. So I'm talking to you because I'm trying to work on that. Oh, that's what we're talking about. I thought you thought I was talking to somebody. You know what I mean? Like, so for us, a lot of it is, we're not processing the emotion. We're trying to understand what we're doing here.
Yeah.
So if you take that mentality, sometimes if you're approaching a man, this is what we're doing. This is why
Mhm.
we're having this conversation.
Yeah.
That makes more sense. And then
Yeah.
you may get a little bit further that way.
Yeah. But baby steps, baby steps.
Yeah, you can't take a man who's 45 who has never been down
Right.
this road, and all of a sudden, you just want him to blindly follow you, the straw man,
Right.
the thin man, and the cowardly lion down this yellow brick road, and think he's gonna go willingly.
Right.
So, so he gonna click his Georgians 3 times and try to go back home. So
Absolutely.
you have to work him in slowly. You're going against generations and decades of a different type of programming.
Have patience because change is
Yes,
hard. Change
yes,
for people like in these relationships with the kids. If you're the man listening, like just have patience with yourself and keep learning, keep becoming self-aware.
yes.
It just takes time. This was really good. I really enjoyed this. It's so interesting. Before we start, we just kind of say like what we want to talk about. And when he shared this topic, it was something I've been thinking about a lot lately as well. And just kind of, feeling compassion for men, because as a therapist and as somebody who's big on emotions, I can't imagine what it's like to just live life without like expressing yourself or being able to or feeling free to do so. So regardless of if society says it's not good or the person you're with, like, you need that.
Yeah,
So you do what you need to do for yourself.
yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, thank
um
you.
Tell people how they can reach you.
Um, so if you're involved in if you have questions about the disc assessment or the coaching programs or anything associated with that, you can always email me at Team Effort Program, TEAMEFFORT program at gmail.com. Every social media platform is the same. It's all at J Morris CEO. And then yeah, that's a good start.
Okay. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you all for listening. Don't forget, you can follow Jermaine everywhere. Follow me at Celeste the Therapist. You can watch us on YouTube, our podcast episode. And then if you really enjoyed this and love the way Jermaine delivers his messages, he's very consistent. If you go to CelesteTheTherapist.com/podcast, there's a link that will take you to literally all of the episodes that he has been a part of with me. So thank you all so much for listening, and I will talk to you later.
Thank you.